All right, what's up, y'all? Got a great piece of content for you today, relatively short, and I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for just being a part of this thing with me and putting this stuff into practice and being the examples and leaders that you are, and supporting me in every way that you do. It really does mean a lot. So today we're answering the question, is dairy good for you? Because if you're like me, you've probably heard conflicting messages ever since you've been in this real food realm. Well, not even ever since you've been in real food realm, ever since you could understand English or whatever language you speak. Dairy's been through the ringer. It's good and bad. It's like eggs. You know, one day you wake up and it's good for you, and the other day it's bad, and then it's a question of whether full fat and low fat, and it's insane. Now, I'm going to reference a video / podcast that Kresser put together. By the way, Kresser, I've mentioned him before. He's one of my favorite practitioners of all time. I followed him since my very beginnings over 10 years ago. And he's put together a compilation of his assessment of some studies. He also confirms a lot of things that I've talked about for the past 10 years. And most of those conclusions I've come to on my own, through my own research, working with clients. And so it's great to hear this stuff confirmed. So here's the deal. Here's where we are now with dairy. Some people and methodologies think it's great, including the SHT. And then you got methodologies like the Weston A Foundation. They've always been huge fans of dairy. And then you got other ones that are a little bit more modern, things like the Paleo movement that say that full-fat dairy is a Neolithic food or a more modern food. Some people say it's inflammatory, and I've heard this my entire career, and I've never understood what is inflammatory about it. You hear it's inflammatory, but no one can really tell you what's inflammatory about it. And then the mainstream narrative or the mainstream medical community is going to say that dairy can be good for you if it's low-fat or non-fat. So the reality is that we have been consuming full-fat dairy straight from the animals, and in some situations fermented into other products for over 10,000 years now. So it's not as ancestral as meat, but it's pretty freaking ancestral. And there's plenty of primitive populations all over the planet that use dairy as a part of their overall way of eating. And the reason is because it has a lot of nutritional value, which maybe they understand that, or maybe they don't. Maybe intuitively they understand and know that they feel different and better having that as part of their nutrition program, or having that as part of the foods they consume. But also, it's always traditionally been a great source of hydration for a lot of these primitive populations. Now, research clearly shows that full-fat dairy is protective against many of the modern chronic degenerative diseases that we face. And specifically, it's protective against diabetes, and it's protective against heart disease. And some of the main reasons for this are what our bodies can do with it. All right, so full-fat dairy is a great source of medium chain triglycerides, which are really easy for the body to use for energy. So it's a great source of fat-based energy. And as you all know, one of our goals with eating real food is training the body how to be metabolically flexible and being able to use fat for fuel. And from a nutrition perspective, full-fat dairy is a powerhouse. It's got a lot of unique fatty acids. It's got butyrate. It's got conjugated linoleic acid. And it's got fat-soluble nutrients like the animal version of vitamin A, and also, super crucial, vitamin K2. And the more fermented the dairy product, usually the more vitamin K2 you're going to find in that dairy product. And then finally, calcium. Full-fat dairy is the best source of bioavailable calcium in the real food realm, period. So the bottom line is, if you do good on dairy, it's good for you. So then the question is, do you do good on dairy? So let's just address that really quick. Now, it is possible to have a sensitivity, even an allergy to some of the dairy proteins like casein and whey, but the reality is a very small percentage of the population has a problem with the proteins, whereas it's estimated about 2/3 of the global population has a problem with lactose intolerance. And all that means is that you need to choose your dairy products wisely, because some dairy products have more lactose than other dairy products. So I'm going to share a spectrum of dairy products with you that illustrates the dairy products that have more lactose versus the ones that don't. But just to summarize what that looks like, everyone should do good on ghee because ghee is certified dairy-free. Ghee is clarified butter. Butter, I have seen 2 people in the 10 years that I've been practicing and seeing clients and doing public talks. I've only seen 2 people that were so sensitive to dairy that they couldn't tolerate butter. So 99% of people are going to do fine on butter, even if they don't think they do good on dairy in general. And then hard cheeses and aged cheeses, because they've been fermented so long, that's why they become hard, usually have fermented most of the lactose out. So we're talking about things like Parmesan Reggiano, some of the hard cheddar cheeses, especially sharp and extra sharp. And then cream is almost nothing but dairy fat, so there's very little lactose in cream. And then once you get into soured cream is fermented cream, which means that you've fermented even more of the lactose out. So those are the things most people are going to do fine on, even if they have some kind of lactose intolerance. And the best thing to do is experiment. Now, the high lactose dairy products are going to be full-blown milk and then soft cheeses and yogurt. Now, again, personally, in my practice, seeing people for 10 years now What I've noticed is a lot of people that come into eating real food think they can't do dairy, and then they find out they can. And the reality is that their bodies were probably hypersensitive to all the processed foods and the things they were eating that were inappropriate. And it made them sensitive to things that they otherwise wouldn't be sensitive to. So once you get into eating real food and you clean things up, give dairy a shot because it's such a nutritional powerhouse. And pro tip, watch for ingredients in dairy. So I've had a ton of clients that thought they didn't do well on heavy cream by using heavy cream in their coffee, for instance. And it wasn't the heavy cream, it was the carrageenan and the gums, like war gum, that were adding ingredients in the heavy cream that they didn't do well on. So if they found a pure cream, they did totally fine. Now the best way to know if you do well on dairy is to do an elimination diet. And that means that you would pull dairy out for at least 1 week, ideally up to 4 weeks. And then once you've been clean of dairy for a while, then you can bring in some of those dairy products one at a time to see how your body responds. Okay, so let's just summarize those points one more time. First, dairy is ancestral. Different populations all over the planet have been consuming it for a really long time, over 10,000 years now. A lot of primitive populations consume it. It's a staple in their diet. Latest research confirms that if you tolerate dairy, it's good for you because of the nutritional benefits. We've got fat-based energy through medium chain triglycerides, and we've got nutrients like fatty acids, butyrate, conjugated linoleic acid, fat-soluble nutrients like vitamin A and vitamin K2, and bioavailable calcium. Also, it's useful to know the spectrum. If you're nervous about dairy or you're not sure, start with the things that tend to have the least lactose. Ghee, butter, hard cheeses, cream, and sour cream. And then to know for sure, you'd want to do an elimination diet. Just take dairy out for a significant period of time and then reintroduce it and see how you feel. And that's it. And then I'd highly recommend listening to or watching Chris Kresser's little piece on full fat dairy. Questions, comments, feedback, even snide remarks sent into my way. And as always, keep it real.